Gaudy. Gaudy stats. Gaudy stats. Good God, that's Gaudy. Welcome to Gaudy Stats.
With Ben Simmons.
What's on the menu, Benny boy?
We're back. We're back. Oh, yeah. It's that time again. Hiatus is over. Fresh, hot, steaming new podcast for you. Right out of the oven. Today we're going to be talking to Philly fan Dan about these exciting, dynamic 76ers, even without Joel Embiid. They take down the Miami Heat by 27 points. Just a classic thrashing. We talk about my namesake, the other, less impressive Ben Simmons, if I can be honest. I'm kidding. I'm just very biased in that regard. I consider myself the original Ben Simmons. He is a dime store knockoff, just taller, more athletic, and is the first rookie with 1,000 points, 500 rebounds, 500 assists, 50 blocks, and 50 steals in a season. The first rookie ever to do that. Gaudy. So gaudy. Oh, it sends me over the moon. I mean, he averaged 15 points, 8 assists. So 15.8 points, 8.2 assists, and 8.1 rebounds with 1.7 steals on 54.5% shooting. He shot a lot of layups. He was around the basket a lot. The man only took, he averaged 0.1 3-point attempts a game, so he barely took any threes. He's got to improve his jump shot, but what a season he had. And what a season Joel Embiid had. JJ Redick had a great season, 17 points a game, 42% shooting. Covington had a decent season. Saric played great. This 76ers team is a lot of fun to watch. Simmons is running the show temporarily while Joel Embiid, is out, but he's going to be back soon. I can't wait for these playoffs. They're going to be so exciting. We're going to be with you every step of the way. Maybe not every step, but, we're going to be there with you, okay? But let's get right to it, all right? With this, we're gonna eat some dumplings, okay? We're going to have some shrimp, some steamed dumplings, some shrimp dumplings. We're going to do some pan-fried pork dumplings with that delicious peanut oil sauce. Oh, put the oil on top of the dumplings and eat it. You can never have enough oil, am I right? Oil makes everything better. Grease it up. I'm losing it. I'm starving right now. I always do these podcasts when I'm hungry. This podcast is no different, folks. Dumplings galore, soup dumplings, fried dumplings, Russian-style dumplings with a sauerkraut in there, with a little roast beef. All those dumplings, all-you-can-eat dumplings. Philly Dan's here. Let's hit it.
Hello.
Good morning, Dan.
How's it going, Ben?
It's going pretty good. Just drank a little juice. Had a banana. Invigorated by all the vitamins. I'm ready to talk to you. Hear your voice.
It's good to hear. Yeah. I wouldn't want you depleted.
No,
important conversation.
Yeah, I know. No deficiencies. Don't want that. Want to have all the vitamin and minerals for this conversation. My friend, we talked earlier, and you attended an event that I really wanted to attend. I couldn't quite make it. A wedding of a mutual friend of ours. You have some stories. You have some. Regale me with a few of your favorite stories from the festivities a couple weekends ago.
Well, there are definitely a couple that stand out. We have a mutual friend who one of our other mutual friends calls T-Bone. He went golfing. They played one hole of chip and putt golf, and he managed to roll his ankle on that one hole, and was then limping around for the rest of the rest of the wedding. Although he did get a hotel shaman, which apparently the hotel had, to
this is in Bali, by the way.
For an hour.
This is in Bali, by the way.
This is in Indonesia. In Bali, Indonesia. The resort was pretty secluded. You know, the friend who got married is definitely our most inconsiderate friend and most selfish. Because after 30 hours of air travel, I then had to take a 2-hour car ride just to get there.
My God.
But hey, that felt like nothing at that point.
Yeah.
We were like an hour into the car ride. I was like, are we close? The driver was like, hour away. I was like, okay, great. And so, but it was hilarious. We were like all sitting in the pool, and the massage was occurring on a balcony facing the pool. And there's another guy standing there who had to translate for the shaman. So hats off to the resort. They were incredibly helpful in taking care of that, because he did feel a lot better afterwards, and we all felt better about that.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of that, and it was really funny. He was he looked to be in great pain. He looked to be in anguish.
He was wincing a lot, and it didn't help the fact that like the only thing he was wearing the entire time was flip-flops, which, given that they were flat and made out of foam, I don't think provided a lot of ankle support.
Yeah, I have ankle issues myself. At my right ankle, I've turned it or sprained it probably like 8 times. So my heart goes out to him, but I've never sprained my ankle wearing flip-flops before. So that I don't know what that's like. It's probably much worse. But that's absolutely hilarious. But I also feel bad for him at the same time.
I've dealt with ankle issues my entire life too, and you know, I definitely was sympathetic. But then there was another event that occurred that I can't relate to.
Yeah. Because
we have a friend who I'm going to refer to as the man who grew too much, because he's 9 feet tall, roughly. And like 3 days before the wedding, they being him and his girlfriend, and T-Bone and his girlfriend, to like a monkey forest in a different part of Bali. And the tall one like allowed the monkeys to climb him, and one of them, while perched on his head, and there's documented photographic evidence of this, decided to sink its disturbingly large fangs into his scalp. In a way that I don't think was playful. And so, yeah, he got bitten by a monkey, and it's not even the first time in his life that he's been bitten by a monkey. That's my favorite stat regarding this. This is the second time he's been bitten by a monkey, which is the kind of thing that's like 2 more times than most people will ever achieve. So, you know, he's running laps around the field at this point.
That's hilarious.
Because of this, he missed the gathering on Friday because he had to stay in like the more populated part of the island to see a doctor on Saturday, who then informed him that he would need like 9 shots of this basically like monkey cure and it was supposed to be like 1 shot for every 20 pounds of human, even though he's like 260. They didn't have any more than the 9 vials, I don't think. So, although somehow he didn't get the shots that Saturday and was supposed to go back on Sunday and get them, even though he was flying out on Sunday. So long story short, I don't know if he ever got them.
Yeah.
There was a full moon the night of the wedding, and he didn't turn into a were-monkey. So that's encouraging. But
yeah,
I mean, he was like he was drunkenly climbing over people, but it's standard operating procedure for him. But you know, it was was a pretty.
I was gonna say, did he kill the monkey virus with like a lot of alcohol? Was he still pounding beers and drinks and cocktails? And
if he didn't kill the virus with lots of alcohol, it wasn't for lack of trying. It just means the virus is pretty resilient.
Yeah.
Because he showed up around 3:00 on Saturday. Bear in mind the wedding was at 5, and Friday we spent all of Friday night putting drinks on his tab, which was another mutual friend of ours' idea. And of course, the tall man didn't even blink when faced with this. But yeah, I think he was just disappointed that he wasn't there accumulating drinks as well. But he FaceTimed, like he called me on WhatsApp video call from the hotel. I was in a different room. I was in the groom's room, like preparing. By preparing, I mean sitting around drinking bourbon with 6 other dudes. And like he WhatsApps me, and before he even says a word, he cracks open a bottle of cachaça and starts like drinking it straight from the bottle. Now, why that's the spirit he chose? Cachaça is the base ingredient for caipirinhas. And it's not something you want to drink straight. It's basically the Brazilian version of rum. And why he chose that, I do not know. He ended up leaving 2/3 of that bottle behind the next day. But I guess for the hotel staff. But yeah, it was he was only there for about 24 hours, but it was a virtuoso performance.
Yeah.
He
always
makes a lot of small amounts of time.
Yeah, he maximizes his time. He does well, and he's like an NBA player. He's extremely efficient in like 20 minutes. Like Boban Marjanovic. He comes in, scores 20 points in 20 minutes or 15 minutes, and gets 10 rebounds with 7 offensive rebounds. That's our mutual friend, in which you refer to. He's a great man. I'm so sad I missed it. All right, anything else?
His per 36 numbers are off the charts.
Yeah. His per 36 minute, he's off the charts. Any other stats from the weekend? Any more gaudiness you want to?
There is one.
Yes.
There is one.
Give
So
it to me.
you have a mutual friend that went to Indiana University with you. Is there a particular name we want to give him before I go on with this story?
Just call him
present for the pizza episode.
Just call him Ref. Call him Ref. He goes by that's one of his aliases, RETH.
First of all, he brought this water ball, which is like 3 cents worth of buoyant petroleum that bounces across the water if you skip it right. And that was, despite the fact that we were all on the other side of the world in this beautiful tropical paradise, that became like the most entertaining thing that we had. Which is not to downgrade the wedding. It's just to really paint a picture of how awesome the water ball was. So anyway, around 1:30 a.m., when a lot of people had changed out of the night of the wedding, a lot of people had changed out of their finery and put on bathing suits, and we got back in the pool and everything. And a bunch of people were hanging out by the bar, and the groom, who hadn't really gotten a chance to eat much due to, time expectations and nerves and things like that.
Yeah.
Ordered multiple pizzas to the bar. The resort kitchen made pizza, and he ordered a couple of them. And, there's a WhatsApp chat that was going around. And at one point, the one you call Ref had already decided to basically call it a night, but he was still awake. And the groom asked him if he was coming out, and his response was, "No, I don't hang out with people who don't share pizzas." So...
and just so everybody knows,
I call back to a story.
Well, yeah,
a story which made its way into the best man speech, I should point out.
Yeah.
Given by another mutual friend of ours, where you were actually called out by name.
Oh, yes.
For being incredulous at the behavior of the groom at the time, who sitting on a keg, wearing capris, and not sharing his pizza.
Sitting on an empty keg, just sitting right on it.
So was it empty?
Right on the nozzle. Right, he's sitting directly on the nozzle of the keg. That's what he was doing. Eating pizzas, eating multiple pizzas, wearing capris. He had friends from abroad in, I think a couple friends he met in Italy were there, and he had ordered at least 3 pizzas, and he had them all on his lap, and he was eating them by himself. He would not share any of the pizza. His friends from Italy were looking at him aghast, disgusted. And he would literally slap people's hands.
He was planning on sharing the pizza with them.
No, he didn't share any pizza. He didn't share any pizza with anybody. He as far as I remember, it could be mythologized in my mind, but he was slapping hands away. He was saying, and then people started making fun of his capris, and he said, "You'll see, everyone's wearing them in Europe. You'll see." He's insinuating that they were going to come to the U.S. and every man, girl, boy, and woman and child would be wearing capris in 5 years or something. It was extremely hilarious. One of the golden memories from college. Never forget it.
Well, to his credit, he did begrudgingly share the pizzas he ordered to the bar at the wedding. So he has evolved as a person since then.
Yes, that's good. That's good that he's evolved some in the last 10 years. Go ahead, my friend.
He also handed out visors to everyone at the wedding.
The perfect.
They were worn with varying regularity by the guests. But as someone with both pride and shame, I decided not to put one on. The groom has neither, so he wears them constantly. But
that's so funny.
But,
yeah. God. Oh, my friend. Thank you for telling some great stories about the ceremony and the celebration and everything. I really wish I could have been there. But
we all wish you could have been there.
Oh man, thank you for that. Oh, I was sad to miss it. But we're here to talk about 76ers. Mr. Ben Simmons, the other Ben Simmons. I would say the lesser Ben Simmons, but I'm a little biased. He put on a show yesterday. Okay, his first playoff game. And what does he do? 14 assists, 9 rebounds, 17 points, 2 steals. Did have 5 turnovers, but a great game. He played an awesome game. The whole team played an awesome game. And I just want to ask you, just at the end. So we're at the end of the year. Obviously, the first playoff game has occurred. Philly won by 27 points, which against the Heat. The Heat are a good defensive team. I think it's a nice win. It's a nice
after being down 4 at halftime.
Yeah, and they just came out and just ran him off the court without Embiid. They have a lot of cool players. I love T.J. McConnell. He's a scrappy guy. I got to ask you, just straight up, do you think T.J. McConnell could be a starting NBA point guard? Do you think it could happen? Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah, if your team is terrible, he was a starting NBA point guard for those bad Sixers teams. He's definitely much more suited to be a bench player.
Yeah, he only played 7 minutes. He played 7 minutes in that game. So, yeah.
I mean, T.J. McConnell is an undersized, seemingly unathletic white man who wears number 12, which puts him, square in my line of sight in terms of players I would adore. But and we'll get to a bit of that later. But is T.J. McConnell, for an NBA player, particularly good at basketball? And he's fine. He's a nice guy to bring off the bench for 8 or 9 minutes, but I think he's now the third best point guard on the Sixers.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was asking that in jest. I mean, you have so many guys who can handle the ball. I mean, you have Saric, who I love. You have TJ. You have Ben Simmons. Even Covington can handle the ball a little bit. You just have a really solid team. What was the thing you enjoyed the most about this year? If you could just sum it up, what was it? Embiid? Was it Ben Simmons's? I mean, do you think that? What do you think about Hinkie now? I mean, what's your opinion on Hinkie? I have my own opinion, which I'm going to give, but what do you feel? What's your opinion, and what do you think? How do you think Philadelphia feels about him now?
Well, I mean, the argument against Hinkie, which was never a good argument, was always, you can't do this to the fans. And it's we sat through 12 seasons of mediocrity. Go ahead and do it if it means we're going to be good again. And, nobody wants to win 43 games in the NBA. There's no point in that. If Andre Iguodala is your best player, I'm sorry, but your team is not going anywhere. If he's your 5th best player, you're one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah.
But if he's your best player, then you've got problems. And so, when they fired Hinkie, I thought it seemed a little bit premature. But I didn't feel super sorry for him. His teams did lose 200 games in 4 years, more than that. No, I'm giving them way too much credit. They lost 300 games in 4 years, but whatever the actual number is. But but I never had a problem with what he was doing, and neither did any of my friends who are actually Sixers fans.
Yeah.
So I mean, even when it was the first thing he did, I think it was him, the Andrew Bynum trade. Which obviously, in retrospect, Andrew Bynum played 0 games for the Sixers, but even when it happened, I was like, this is how you do it. You're supposed to acquire superstars any way you can. And, Bynum obviously turned out that was basically the end of his career. But the goal, you don't win NBA championships without having at least two great players, preferably more. And they've found a way to do that. And, the idea that it was cruel to the fans, like, are you kidding me? Look at what the fans were like yesterday. This is, yeah, there were years where the Sixers were terrible, but you know what I did? I didn't watch the Sixers. I was just like, whatever. There's other sports on. I'm in my 30s. I don't care. Maybe it was a little bit crueler to kids.
Yeah.
But they had other sports teams that they could root for and other things to do with their lives. And now the Sixers have two, top 15 players in the NBA? And,
Yeah, I was thinking about that because, they're like two, you could argue, I guess Giannis is still considered a young asset. You could argue they're two of the top three young players, like young assets in the NBA. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. You got, Karl Anthony Towns. You got Giannis. When you say top 15, there's a lot of really good players. I don't know. That's a tough one. But like top 15, all the players, I don't know about that. Joel Embiid, when he's healthy, probably is top 15. But I'm not sure if Ben Simmons is there quite yet. But he's close. And he could be there like super fast. Like even after these playoffs, he could be elevated to a new level. You know what I'm saying? And it's really exciting. I think I'm imagining what it's like to be a Sixers fan. I can ask you the questions, but you have all these young assets. You have, basically what happened was you were horrible for like 4 or 5 years, and now you're set up for like 15 years. So, I think I think Sam Hinkie, I would call him a basketball genius. That's very hyperbolic, but he found the weakness in the system and he exploited it. And I don't know why he doesn't have another GM job. I thought what he did was masterful. He definitely made some mistakes, but he got you guys set up for the foreseeable future. And don't sleep on Dario Saric either. That guy is the real deal. He's really good. Really good.
Yeah, not everything Hinkie did worked, but the man did draft Julio Okafor. Oops. But what he did was he wanted to maximize his chances of acquiring superstar talent.
Exactly.
And in some senses, he got lucky. Like Embiid would have been the first overall pick if he were healthy, and then we'd be sitting here with like Jabari Parker, who is a good basketball player but is not Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
If that had broken differently,
Yeah.
And I think he wasn't actually around when we ended up getting the pick that turned into Simmons. And you can, some people like to criticize him for drafting Michael Carter Williams instead of Giannis, but like every team whiffed on Giannis.
Yeah.
And the biggest criticism is Okafor over Porzingis, which at the time annoyed me.
I think at the time he was on everyone's board as like a top 2. Okafor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but the Sixers had Nerlens Noel and they had Joel Embiid. Like they didn't need him.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. For sure. They could have used.
I think the Sixers thought. Right. They thought they were going to get D'Angelo Russell. They did not expect the Lakers to take him at 2. And that sort of threw them off. And then I think they had to sort of panic scramble because Porzingis didn't work out for them.
Yeah.
And everything. But like whatever, the process worked in this case. It wasn't a guarantee to work, but it did.
Yeah, I agree. It's like you said, he gave himself a lot of shots at getting that Hall of Fame player. He gave himself plenty of chances, and you're right, he whiffed a bunch of times, he took some chances, but he gave himself so many chances that he succeeded because he had all those chances. Like a lot of franchises only have like 2 chances in 5 years. He gave himself like 10. He got Nerlens Noel. He got all these assets with potential huge ceilings, and the Ben Simmons pick came. That was his orchestration that they got that pick. It was like they had this like war chest of draft picks that he accumulated, and they still have a lot. I think. It's not over yet. They just have all these assets and. I don't know, man. Well, what are your thoughts on Joel Embiid? He was healthy most of the year. He had a hell of a year. He's going to probably be on some All NBA teams. What do you like most about Joel?
Oh, I mean, that's hard to choose. I mean, you have the fact that he's incredibly good at basketball, which, as someone who roots for him on your basketball team, is like a really good thing.
Yeah,
So,
I'll say.
there's that. And his social media presence is absolutely hysterical. So, it's that's definitely entertaining. And he's fully embraced Philadelphia. He's fully embraced the whole idea of the process.
Yeah, I love that.
And he's an excellent basketball player. The injury, the current injury, doesn't concern me because it was a freak accident. Like it's an anomaly, and as long as his feet are okay,
yeah,
I'm not concerned.
Yeah.
Of course, there will always be injury concerns with him.
Yeah.
That's especially true of men who are that large. It's just the human body wasn't meant to support that much person.
Yeah, he's a galoot.
Like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, he's a true galoot. He's an oaf of the highest order. Can't get around that. But he's an agile oaf. He can move around.
Oh yeah.
He's but you're right about the feet, and that just scares me, like the leg injuries and the feet. But they seem to be handling him well, and damn, he had a hell of a year, man. Like we'll have to do a pod on just him at some point, but maybe it's too premature because he's only accumulated a small amount of statistics. But speaking,
wait till he plays 100 NBA games.
Yeah, seriously, like this guy is such a small sample size, but he had a hell of a year. Speaking of small sample size, your high draft pick from last year, Markelle Fultz, was dusted off. He was oiled up. His shoulder, his jump shot, his weird cockeyed release. I don't know how you even describe that. It's like some sort of catapult jump shot thing he has going on. He was dusted off and thrown in the second unit, and he turned in some really nice performances. He was the youngest player. Okay, this isn't garbage time. Okay, but the other night he was the youngest player ever. He beat out Lonzo Ball from earlier this year, which just gives you an idea how common triple doubles are these days. But he beat Lonzo Ball out for the youngest player ever to get a triple double. Markelle Fultz, what are your thoughts, Dan?
Well, it turns out that the guy who was the consensus number one overall pick is also pretty good at basketball, which is nice.
Yeah.
And obviously there were concerns earlier in the year about his seemingly broken jump shot and the fact that he might have lost his mind.
Just small concerns, no big deal. Just he might have gone crazy. Might gone crazy.
Something every rookie goes through. I mean, it's part of the learning process. But no, I think the Sixers have handled it pretty well. I mean, at first it seemed like a disaster, and then it seemed like he was just going to sit out his first year, which is a Sixers rookie rite of passage, and then it's like he's coming back and he's basically providing a spark off the bench.
Yeah. Because
he does a lot of the same things Simmons does offensively in terms of distribution and athleticism. And so now, like, they can give Simmons more of a break and still have a guy in there who's a dynamic playmaker.
Yeah.
Even if his shot isn't back to where we thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But, the Sixers have other shooters. And, I mean, adding Fultz has been helpful. But I think the biggest difference between the Sixers of the beginning of the year, who were basically a 500 team, and the Sixers now, who've won 17 in a row, is in addition to the fact that over that 16-game win streak, they were playing worse teams, but the addition of like bench guys who can shoot threes like Ilyasova and Bellinelli.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you about
super
those
helpful.
Guys. Okay, that's where I want to go next. I want to ask you about those guys. Do you mind? Because
no, go for it.
I feel like those two guys are some of the most underrated free agent pickups this year. You had Bellinelli on the Hornets. I think Ilyasova was on the Hawks, maybe the Bucks. I don't know.
Yeah, he was.
He's just floating around, the fringes of the NBA. Not in, like he wasn't good, but he just was like, he wasn't on a team. He wasn't on the team that had a lot of excitement, and he was scooped up, for nothing, just off the free agency. And both these guys, like especially Bellinelli, Bellinelli has some real playoff experience. He played really well for the Spurs in their title run, I believe, or at least in some of their playoff runs. He was on some of those teams. And then Ilyasova, it's another shooter you were talking about. You have Redick, Ilyasova, Bellinelli, Saric can stroke it. So you have and we know that Covington can get hot. We haven't even talked about him. That guy is a defensive dynamo, a lot of steals. Oh, I'm always looking at his steal numbers because he can get like 6 steals in like a night sometimes. But what are your thoughts on what's Ilyasova's nickname? It's something really weird. Let's look it up really fast.
I don't know.
It's something really funny, I think. The Turkish Thunder. Ilyasova, Turkish Thunder.
Okay.
What are you feeling? Yeah, what are you feeling on these bench guys? Bellinelli and Ilyasova.
Well, I mean, they were made the Sixers, a slightly better than average team into a very good team because the Sixers kept blowing late leads because they didn't have a bench.
Yeah.
They didn't have guys who could score off the bench. They didn't have guys who could defend off the bench, and consequently, they blew several large second half leads.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have guys who can come off the bench and hit a bunch of threes and defend different positions and basically keep the offense going even without Simmons or Embiid on the court. And it's made an enormous difference. I mean, yesterday, I was reading about this morning and talking about how Brett Brown made a second half adjustment. Brett Brown, who people were talking about firing after 30 games, who is now widely considered one of the best coaches.
Yeah, that'd be so
coaches
cruel
in the league.
That would have been so cruel to do that.
Had the Sixers fired him after 30 games, then I would have been out on the current management. The dude went through literal basketball hell.
Yeah.
And now that he's finally like sort of being lifted into purgatory and then actual salvation, you're going to fire his ass? Come on.
Yeah, that'd be horrible.
And given his pedigree with the Spurs, like you need to give the man time. That's what you promised him, and now it's obviously paying off. He's obviously a good coach.
Yeah, for sure.
But apparently what he did at halftime was he took Amir Johnson out of the lineup and put Ilyasova in, which basically made Simmons surrounded by 4 shooters, and it left Hassan Whiteside basically clueless on defense. And the Sixers immediately went on a huge run, and Whiteside didn't play again for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And the Sixers outscored the Heat by 31 points in the second half.
Wow.
So, it's a
beautiful thing.
The fact that Simmons can't shoot doesn't seem to matter because when the 4 other guys can, the defense can't do a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
So,
and also, like, who in the hell on the other team is going to guard Simmons? It's like, if you put a point guard on him, like that's not going to work. He's just too big. He'll overpower them. It just puts the defense at such a weird disadvantage. Like that, like how many? I mean, besides like LeBron's team, obviously, the Cavaliers. Like, where are you going to see that kind of matchup? You don't like with Giannis, but Simmons has the ball in his hands all the time, and he creates so many mismatches just by the mere fact he has the ball in his hands. He goes to the rim. He puts so much pressure on the defense. I gotta say that just the team without Embiid is fun to watch. Like that, just like that. Just what you described, like Simmons and 4 shooters, was a joy to watch. Truly.
Yeah, and it's as far as guarding Simmons goes, the Heat tried it with 7-foot-tall Canadian white man named Kelly.
Kelly.
Turns out that didn't work. Shockingly, despite all of those other factors going in his favor. So, yeah, I mean, that's the amazing thing about Simmons. If he ever figures out how to shoot, he's going to become the best player in the NBA. And given that he's, 20 years old, that seems like I wouldn't bet against him figuring out how to shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, if Anthony Davis is shooting threes now, why can't Ben Simmons?
Oh,
so,
Anthony Davis. Man. He had another great game, Anthony Davis.
Speaking of young assets who are tremendously good. He's still only 25. It's insane.
God, he's such a beast. He's such a beast. And Rondo had 17 assists last night, too. They're a Gaudy stats team, but that's going to be a fun series. I tell you, these playoffs are going to be fun. I'm excited.
They are. Is Rajon Rondo, given the fact that he's from Louisville, Kentucky, and so obsessed with his own stats, a patron saint of the Gaudy Stats podcast? I feel like he should be.
He is, no doubt. He looks for his assists. It's been well documented. He goes out of his way. if he's all by himself with a wide open layup, he will wait 5-10 seconds for another player to run on the court on a fast break and then dish it to them. He's allergic to shooting jump shots, layups, threes, and he doesn't want to go to the foul line because he can't really shoot free throws. He just wants the assists, and he's been getting them this year. He had that 25 assist game. He's had some 17 assist games, 15 assists. It's been a joy to watch him. Yeah, he's a local kid. He left after I think 1 or 2 years in Louisville and went to like the Oak Hill Academy or some basketball academy. And but yeah, I remember seeing the box scores when I was I think it was when I was in middle school or high school. I can't remember, but yeah, he would put up like 32 points, 25 rebounds, 15 assists, 10 blocks, 7 steals, like just absolutely ridiculous, gaudy, just Wilt-like stat lines. It was clear that he was going to be an NBA talent. I mean, I don't know. He was actually drafted by my Suns, but we sold him to the Celtics for $3 million. So that's just another horrible move by the Suns and Robert Sarver that has come back to haunt us. But anyways, let's not get into that. So before we move off these 76ers, I just want to briefly ask you, what do you think the ceiling is for this team? All right, do you think, obviously they won the first game against the Heat. Do you think they can win this series, and how far do you think they can go in the playoffs?
Okay, well, the ceiling is sort of a loaded question because what the ceiling is, you have to also understand that we're talking like maybe a 1% chance.
That's fine. No. You know what? Use your imagination, because I feel like, well, we'll get into what I think, but use your imagination with this team, because there's a chance they could break out during these playoffs. There's a lot of mismatches. If the matchups fall right, I mean, the playoff games slow down. Embiid's going to be a huge factor if he comes back at full strength, which it sounds like he's going to. A lot of more low post game, a lot of, the game just slows down a little bit. There's not as much, free-flowing basketball. It's more like pounded into the paint. So Embiid's going to take center stage. So what do you think?
I mean, I think there are 4 teams who can win the NBA championship this year. The Sixers are one of them. Again, that's like a 1% chance.
That's fine.
I don't think they will win the NBA championship. I do think they'll beat the Heat, although it wouldn't shock me if they didn't. The Heat are a good team. The Heat
are good, yeah.
But if they get to the second round against either a Bucks team that they just beat by 35, granted the Bucks were trying to lose, they didn't want to play the Sixers in the first round, and Giannis is always terrifying, or a Boston team that's missing its 2 best players, although it does have a great coach and still plenty of talent, there's no reason they can't win that series too. And then, one would assume that if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, they're going to be playing the Cavs. Because, the Raptors are going to beat the Cavs in the playoffs. No, that's not within the realm of possibility. So I don't care how good the Raptors theoretically are. Until they beat LeBron, I'm not going to assume they can beat LeBron.
Yeah.
And then, could they beat the Cavs? They'd have the home court advantage if they played the Cavs. Could they beat the Cavs in a 7-game series?
They played the Cavs well.
They
played them pretty well.
Yeah.
And
and then could they take 4 games out of 7 against a Western Conference team? I don't see why not. I mean, it doesn't mean they will. The Rockets are a better team. The Warriors are a better team. I'm not disputing that by any stretch. A healthy Steph Curry kind of makes the Warriors an impossibility. But he's not healthy at the moment. And, who knows? I don't think they're going to win the championship. I don't think they're going to get that far.
Yeah.
But, the Eagles just won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, man. So anything's possible.
I know. I was going to say, man, it's kind of Philadelphia's year. So there's a lot of good
sports revolution is upon them.
Yeah, there's a lot of good mojo floating around right now. I think the playoffs are filled with some interesting what ifs, or like some interesting matchups. Like I think that the Minnesota-Houston matchup, Rockets Timberwolves, I think that's interesting because you got a lot of talent on Minnesota. There's a lot of young players, but there's so much pressure on the Rockets. Like I know they had an amazing year. They've had a lot of demons too in the playoffs with Chris Paul and James Harden. And the Rockets and the Timberwolves are stacked, man. I mean, like Jimmy Butler is going to be guarding James Harden probably a lot of the time. It's gonna affect the Rockets offense. Chris Paul is going to probably run wild. But I mean, who's going to guard Karl Anthony Towns? Like, Clint Capella is a great center, but he's not. If you look at his stats, like, he gives up a lot of stats to the center position. And so Karl Anthony Towns is going to be running wild. I'm intrigued by that. I just think it's going to be a great playoffs, but let's not get too deep into that. I'm just babbling at this point. My friend, one of the greatest players in 76ers history is a small but quick man who he famously coined the phrase, "We're talking about practice." And it's become, well, it was more than just that. What was the whole phrase? What did he say? This is not even a game. We're talking about practice or something like that. Give me.
It was something along those lines, and it's a little bit misconstrued. I'd be lying if I said I had the whole rant memorized, because it is, it's like 4 minutes long, and it's perfect. And the part that like sort of got left out into the ether of history is that, like, a good friend of his, I think, had just passed away.
Yeah.
And he missed a practice, and he was really annoyed that people were giving him shit about that, because if you watched Allen Iverson play, you knew that he wasn't leaving anything out there during the game.
Oh, hell no.
Like
hell no.
A game against a mediocre team in February, he's going 100%.
Indeed.
So, and that's what endeared him to anyone who was in Philadelphia at the time. I mean, he's one of my favorite players of all time for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I love him dearly. He had his flaws,
which
is what made him more endearing, I think. He wasn't perfect, on or off the court. And I think that sort of made him seem more real. I mean, there are so many stories about him. My favorite one came from when I was reading an excerpt from a book in Sports Illustrated many years ago. That should tell you how long ago it was, the fact that I was reading Sports Illustrated. And, okay, so on the night that he got drafted, first overall, someone from the stands, the minute his name was announced, jumped up and screamed, "Woo! I am getting fucked up tonight." And that was his mother, who, at the time of his conception, which she claims did not involve penetration, was 15. And his father begs to differ, was the last sentence of that excerpt. So, you're talking about someone whose mom claims he was divinely conceived, and then, or immaculately conceived is what I should say. And
immaculate conception.
Is 15 years older than him, so when he got drafted, she was like 36.
That's wild.
And
oh my God.
And his mother was always a prominent figure in Philadelphia, sitting courtside and cheering on her son.
I think I remember.
But I mean, he was a transcendent superstar for us, and he only made it to one finals, and against a team that was stacked to the fucking gills. Peak Shaq, peak Kobe.
Remember when they won that first game?
That was our championship.
That was
because
wild.
The Lakers at that point had not lost a playoff game, and Iverson absolutely went off, stepped over Tyronn Lue, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
I remember after they won that game, I was like, well, they're going to lose the next 4, but whatever, good enough.
Yeah.
And
that was amazing.
I had friends from LA in college who I met the next year, and they were still pissed off about that one game. And it's like, you motherfuckers just won the championship. Which is mad. They're like, yeah, we didn't get the perfect postseason. I was like, well, fuck you then. All right. But
now those LA fans are so spoiled back then. LA fans, that era of LA fan had it so good. So good, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Lakers have employed like 5 of the 20 greatest players of all time. It's, it's not.
Yeah.
The Lakers, they're spoiled for obvious reasons, and that's all well and good. But so you look at the players, and people used to. The biggest complaint on Iverson was that he was selfish, he was a ball hog, he shot too much, and it's like, look at who he's playing with. I mean, that Sixers team got considerably worse before the playoffs started because George Lynch got hurt. Like, when's the last time you heard that name, Ben? George Lynch.
It's been a really long time. Man, that's been a long time.
Don't get me wrong. He was a decent NBA player, but nobody's talking about George Lynch.
That team was devoid of talent.
Great.
That team, Eric Snow, who is basically extinct. That type of player that Eric Snow is extinct now in the NBA. A point guard who can't shoot
threes.
who can't. Yeah, I guess he could hit like foul line jumpers every now and then. But yeah, he could not shoot threes. He plays good defense, but it's just not. The 3-point shot is valued, I think, even higher than the defense right now. I mean, it's just he probably couldn't get on the court today's NBA. But who else is on that team? You had Mutombo.
Here was the starting lineup after the Ratliff trade. Okay, going into the stretch run of the season. Remember, Theo Ratliff was the anchor of that team defensively before they traded him, and he was good. Don't get me wrong. Theo Ratliff was playing well.
Yeah, it's just funny to hear his
that
name.
Sixers team had an incredible record. There were people who at the time were opposed to the trade because it's like, why are we fucking with what's working? And I mean, Mutombo didn't make them any worse. Certainly, I don't think he really made them any better either. But the starting lineup going into the playoffs before the George Lynch injury was Eric Snow, Allen Iverson, George Lynch, Tyrone Hill, Dikembe Mutombo. All right, old Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah, broken down.
That team went to the NBA Finals.
It's crazy.
On the back of a man who's probably like 5'10" and a half.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Oh my goodness.
Like he shoots too much. It's like, who the fuck else should be shooting? Rodney Buford? Larry Hughes? Like, get the fuck out of here. You guys are Aaron McKee? Aaron McKee's jumper took 4 seconds to unleash.
Aaron McKee, that's right.
Aaron McKee. Dragon Ball.
Aaron McKee he hit some clutch shots. I will say that about Aaron McKee. I remember in the playoffs.
Yeah, he wasn't a bad player. I mean,
but no, you're right. I mean,
I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hate on these guys.
I know.
It's just
I know you're not.
This is who Iverson was playing with.
Yeah. It's and what's crazy about looking at Allen Iverson's stats is the amount of minutes he played. I mean, okay, so from 1996 to 2007, 2008, he averaged over 40 minutes every single year except for 97, 98 when he averaged 39.4. I'll just go down. I mean, so first year, 40, 39, 41, 40, 42, 43, 42, 42, 42, 43, 42, 42, 42, 41. I mean, that's an insane amount of minutes. And then after that, he still played a lot of minutes. I mean, 36 the next year, 41. That was just with Denver for like 3 games, but 36. I mean, the guy had so much tread on his tires, and he's also, you're right, he was just had to be on the floor. It's like basically what happened last year when Russell Westbrook would go off the floor for the Thunder. The team would just go down the shitter, and that's the same thing that would happen with those Philly teams. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really come off unless I think he took like breathers at the end of maybe like the middle of the second quarter and like something, maybe a little bit in the second half or whatever. But
yeah.
They needed him to be chucking it up there as much as possible, and his career really took off when I think it was in the second or his third season. Larry Brown said, "You're a shooting guard now. You're not a point guard." And because his first season in the league, he averaged 7.5 assists, and then it was 6.2, and then we're down to below 5.
Mm-hmm.
And his scoring, and he led the league in scoring his third year, despite not being an all-star. And so, I mean, that decision is what sort of unleashed him. And if I have one complaint about him, it's that he never really figured out how to shoot threes.
I know. His 3-point percentages are pretty disgusting, if you ask me. They make him want to throw up.
None of them are higher than 36%.
He's a career 31.3 3-point shooter. But he was shooting a lot. It's true he was shooting, but still, that's awful. I mean, that's just dismal for a shooting guard. And he did, his career field goal percentage wasn't great either. But he's the kind of player, again, like what Russell Westbrook last year, who took a lot of shots. I mean, he was trying to get his team back into games. He was trying to keep his team ahead in games. And also, he had guys who could get rebounds, like Theo Ratliff and Mutombo, both great rebounders. I mean, I wouldn't say Theo Ratliff is, but Mutombo is like one of the best of all time. So there was a lot of offensive rebounds, and his shooting just created activity for his team. And it's really hard to measure guys like that who do shoot a lot, but are like the only offensive, or like the main offensive cog on their team. It's kind of hard to measure their effect on the game.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, he was a joy to watch. He's one of the few players where you watched him and he just made you giggle because he did things that were basically incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving is like this.
Yes.
LeBron doesn't make me giggle. LeBron makes me scream.
Yeah.
Which is just as fun for different reasons.
Yeah.
But Kyrie makes me laugh because he's a fucking wizard.
The
and
dribbling
Iverson was like that too.
The dribbling of both those
guys. How did you just avoid those four guys, all of whom are taller than you, and make a layup while facing away from the basket, and on a 12-degree angle that you kissed it off the glass?
A fun thing, my friends and I in high school, a fun thing that we had going was picking players in the NBA or the NFL who would be great soccer players. Because I played soccer in high school. I lost my love for soccer pretty fast after that. But I will say that I think Allen Iverson would have been like one of the best like strikers ever in soccer if he had chosen to play soccer. Like he is just so quick, the man could dunk early in his career in the NBA. I mean, he was like incredibly athletic. Like, and like you said, it's just so much fun to watch guys that small who are just playing so big. I mean, it's always more fun to watch like a small guy in a dunk contest because it just looks crazy. I mean, you have this like little guy who's just it looks superhuman. The fact that he can get up so high. So, Iverson was no different. I mean, he wasn't like doing tomahawks and stuff like that or like 360s, but he was getting up there, and he was just so much quicker than everybody. And you're right. It was just a joy to watch him play. And the man could score. I mean, let's be real here. I mean, you look at his scoring numbers, and they really pop. I mean, I think his high for his career, his high average was 33, but he had multiple 30-point.
Which didn't lead the league that year.
Who led the league?
Kobe averaged 35 that year.
Oh,
that was
God.
That was the year Kobe should have won the MVP. He didn't. Your boy Steve Nash did, and I don't mean to blaspheme Steve Nash, who I love, but Kobe did average 35 a game that year.
Yeah. I might have a point.
Yeah, Iverson's career average is 26.7. I mean, that's for a career that spanned 914 games. Like that's
wild.
That's a lot.
That's great. I mean, that's we talked about his percentages. They weren't great, but the fact that he had to take all those shots made those percentages come down. But 26.7 is one of the better career point averages I've seen. And any stories about like his like big performances or anything like from your childhood or anything you want to talk about in terms of like some gaudy stats that he put up during his career?
I mean, I wouldn't say that other than that game, one of the finals, there are a large amount of games that stick out. But the thing about Iverson is that you have to understand that before they drafted him, and even a couple of years after they drafted him, the Sixers were terrible for my entire life. They won the championship the year before I was born, and then Dr. J and Moses, who we discussed with reverential tones earlier, sort of faded away by the mid to late 80s.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley was on the team, but they didn't have anyone good around him by the time the night rolled around.
Yeah.
And then they traded him to your Phoenix Suns for peanuts. No offense to Jeff Hornacek. And
Hornacek was part of that.
Hornacek, good basketball player, not better than Charles Barkley. And they stunk for years.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm in middle school, and the Phillies are my favorite team, even though they're not any good. And the Eagles are putting together numerous 10-win seasons with Ray Rhodes and then losing in the first or second round of the playoffs. So the Philly sports scene was bleak, and the Sixers were the bleakest team. Actually, the Flyers were going to the championship at that point and, of course, losing.
Yeah.
But and the Sixers were the worst team of a city filled with shitty teams. And then this guy gets drafted. I mean, they drafted Jerry Stackhouse the year before, and he sort of created some interest. But then this guy comes around, and it's like, oh, this is different. This is somebody who is worth watching immediately. And of course, the moment that sticks out in everybody's head is when he crossed over Jordan his rookie season.
Oh yeah.
And
God,
that was when it was like, okay, he's here. Although I also remember his rookie season, he scored 40 points 5 games in a row, and the Sixers lost all of them. Including the game where he scored 50. The 5th game he scored 50 and they lost. So that sort of encapsulates Allen Iverson's career in a lot of ways.
That's a good point. It kind of does encapsulate his career, sadly. Because there's no way to really get around it. I mean, he was a volume shooter. I mean, the guy. If you look at his shot attempts, his average shot attempts throughout his career, they are. I haven't seen many average shot attempts like that. Let's see. He's okay. His first year, 19, then 17, 22 shot attempts a game. Dan, 24, 25. 27. He took 27 shots a game, 2001, 2002. All right. He averaged 31 points. Yeah, he averaged 31 points, but he shot 39.8% that year. So
not great.
He's a volume shooter, or he was a volume shooter. He was one of the best. I mean, the way that finals team played. His shooting, as I said, his shooting like created energy for their team. I feel like like they would get the rebounds. They would he had to be that guy for that finals team. Now I'm not as well versed about the teams after that finals team. Do you have any memories of what were there other playoff teams after that? Other playoff Iverson teams in Philly after that, or what was the scene after that finals appearance?
Well, yeah, I mean, they were still good. They still made the playoffs. There was the last time the Sixers hosted a playoff game one was like 2003, and I think that was Andre Iguodala's rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
And again, young Andre Iguodala is the best player Iverson played with on the Sixers. I mean, that's all you need to know right there.
That's crazy.
And
that's crazy. That's true and crazy. It's wild.
It is, and it's like young Andre Iguodala was good, but again, he's not the second best player on a championship team. And then they traded him to the Nuggets midway through the 2006-2007 season. And at that point, everyone in Philadelphia was like, well, I guess we're rooting for the Nuggets now. Because I certainly felt that way, and so did millions of other Philadelphians. And it was like, well, the Sixers are no longer worth monitoring. And, he was still our favorite player. So, but no, they never reached the same heights. I don't think they never made another Eastern Conference Finals, let alone a championship. I'm not even sure they ever won another playoff series. I imagine they did, but obviously nothing that memorable. And as when they traded him, that was the sort of the point where the Phillies had become ascendant, and even after the Sixers finals, that's when the Eagles had started to get really good with McNabb. So the Sixers again sort of faded away from the collective consciousness in the city, and now they've come roaring back 15 years later to sort of bring us full circle, and it's nice to see.
It really is, man. Because the fans in Philly, they care, and you could feel it. I mean, like I watched an extended highlights package on YouTube of this game, and the fan reactions, and it's just cool to see that kind of fandom in the NBA. It truly is.
Yeah, it's been a good stretch for Philadelphia sports, and I imagine it's going to continue for a little while.
Yeah,
I was talking to somebody last night, and I was saying that the city of Philadelphia probably, based on how long I've been alive, owes me a backlog of at least like 4 more championships. So I'd rather they not get them all out now. Like, you can stretch it out over the next few years, that's fine.
Yeah.
But and Villanova only counts as half of one because it's college basketball, and I didn't go to Villanova.
Yeah.
So together, the Villanova championships are 1, and then you've got the Sixers, not the Sixers, the Phillies and the Eagles over the last 10 years. So we're at 3. I figured they owe me about 7. So, if you should give me one like once every 5 years, and I'm almost 35. So, by the time I turn 35, we should have like 4 more. And that's like 16 months away. So, I don't know if that's possible, but, it's...
I don't know, man. Anything's possible here. This is as I said, interesting playoffs, kind of wide open to a certain degree. I mean, you still have the Warriors if Steph comes back, but Steph might not come. He might not come back at full strength. So in years past, that's hurt the Warriors. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to but I wanted to draw your attention, and you probably are aware of this already. But the steals numbers that Mr. Iverson put up are well.
They're pretty gaudy.
I'm wide awake now because I just saw these steals numbers. I mean, the man averaged 2.2 steals for his career, which is, I don't have the list in front of me, but that's got to be way up there. His high was 2.8 in 2001, 2002, and he was above 2 for many, many years. I mean, it's an underrated part of his game. I mean, he was obviously super quick and, low to the ground, but those are otherworldly steals numbers, and that it's got to be a huge help for defense because they had those big centers in the back, and he had him pilfering guys left and right, and I think that was part of. I mean, those are defensive minded teams. Larry Brown, who I'm not a big fan of. I'm not. I'll ask you what you think about him, but I'm not a big fan of Larry Brown. But I think those teams were just basically pack it in, give Allen the ball, let him try to score, play great defense, and hopefully, you can just hold that team to, below 100 points or whatever their cap was, and we can just eke out each victory. I mean, it seems like that was kind of their MO. What was your view on Larry Brown's strategy and just general coaching career?
I thought he was a good coach. I mean, there's no really any way around that. I liked him as a Sixers coach. He was a bit of a hard ass.
Yeah.
But I think that's, what Iverson kind of needed. And again, he's the one who decided to make Iverson a shooting guard, which was the right decision.
Yes.
And Larry Brown, I sort of feel like he became bulletproof when he won with the 2004 Pistons.
I don't know.
It's, again, you could sort of say the same thing about him coaching in Philadelphia that you can about Iverson. It's he had one good player, and one really good player.
Yeah. And
he still made it work with that dearth of talent. As far as Iverson's steals go, it's the fact that they were such a defensive-minded team and that they had good guys guarding, the back line is sort of what made him. He took a lot of risks. He jumped a lot of passing lanes.
Yeah.
And obviously it worked to some extent, but it also led to guys, having the ball without a defender on them. But, back then people weren't shooting as many threes, and, it was hard to drive on Mutombo and the aforementioned Tyrone Hill, starting power forward on the all-time ugly NBA team. And, and so he could get away with stuff like that, which is how he averaged, 2.5 or more steals a game for basically 5 years.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy, man. I've never seen.
Yeah, he definitely. It led to a lot of fast break layups.
Yeah, I've never seen steals numbers like that, in that kind of stretch. I mean, they haven't been taking that stat for a really long time. I mean, in relative terms, I mean, we've talked about Wilt's block numbers and things like that. I'm sure Bob Cousy, had a lot of steals, or I don't know how far back we can go, but I'm sure there's a lot of other great players who had a lot of steals. But yeah, these steals numbers are off the charts. He's a fantastic player, pride of Philadelphia, fun player to watch. Just one of the all-time most fun players to watch, as we've detailed. Anything else you want to touch on, my friend? You want to talk? You want to wax poetic about Ben Simmons some more, or I don't know, sing a little song about how beautiful T.J. McConnell is, or talk about Joel Embiid. Anything else you want to touch on?
I save my TJ songs for the shower and the shower only. You're not going to be privy to that. I thought we initially planned to talk about John Stockton today, but we've already gone an hour, so we can just save that for some other time.
Yeah,
speaking of gaudy steals numbers, though.
Yes. We're gonna do a Stockton pod. We got to save a whole pod for him, as we talked about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On the phone earlier, I think yesterday when we spoke. Yeah, we got to have John Stockton have his own pod. It's going to be glorious. It's so his steals and assist numbers are just extremely gaudy. I mean, they're out of this world. I think he's the all-time steals leader. Is that correct?
By about 600, yeah.
Yeah, and he's the all-time assist leader by a lot as well.
By 3,000.
Yeah, I mean, the man, I feel like he's getting he has been. Well, we'll get into it when we do the pod, but he's been forgotten to a certain extent. And people, you look at these all-time point guard lists, he's often pretty far down, you know. And I think it's a disservice to Mr. John Stockton. Yes, his assist numbers may have been inflated slightly. I remember reading this article that, you know, the Jazz scorekeepers would be a little, you know, very liberal with their assists in terms of giving John an assist, and perhaps, you know, it wasn't actually a perfect assist, you know, but still, the man put up crazy numbers, and he's certainly a Gaudy stats legend. So we're gonna do a John Stockton pod. You and I, we're gonna each wear really really tight, really short shorts, and just so we can get into the mindset of John, because he's famous for wearing the Daisy Dukes on the court. And we're gonna have to talk about Karl Malone a little bit. Another man his reputation has been just torn apart, made fun of. He's a punchline. But you want to talk about stats and consistency? That guy, if you look at his career stats year by year, it's pretty impressive as well.
It certainly is. Although I was never a big Malone fan.
Yeah. I think I'm the only Malone fan.
You know, I would never say that his numbers weren't spectacular.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Yeah, we'll save Stockton for another day. I'll make sure to let my thigh hair grow out as much as possible.
Yes. Get your thighs ready.
You know.
Maybe take them outside, expose them to the sun just a little bit. You know, not too much. They have to remain pale, but just so they're healthy, and you know, you got to get them ready because they're going to be featured. Thighs are going to be talked about a lot in this pod. Hey, you know, that's John Stockton, right? That's the short shorts era, and what can we say? It's part of what made John. Scrappy, gritty, and you know, we'll also get into the fact that John was he was thought of as a dirty player, which is kind of interesting. He was during that era.
It's one of the reasons I love him.
Yeah. Like Jordan said, he was a dirty player. And you watch some of these highlights, he definitely had some tricks. And that's one of the reasons why he's one of my favorites as well. So yeah, we're back. We're gonna be doing a lot more podcasts. I got a Steve Nash pod coming with Mr. Samuelson. That's recorded. I just got to edit it together, so it's going to be good times, my friend. But thank you so much for getting on the horn, and we'll talk soon.
My pleasure. And let's check in as the NBA playoffs go on.
Yes, we will. I want to get your take about these Sixers. Well, we'll see where this series goes, but I definitely want to check back in with you for sure.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.